What's up, guys? Welcome back for another solo mining episode, and we're gonna be just doing more of the same, getting more compressed ore, stack it up so it can go to nullsec. We're sitting at like 100 million in compressed value right now. That is about 8,600, as you can see right here, 8,600 cubic meters. Now we gotta do like 14 times this to essentially fill up, or to make the actual export to nullsec worth it. And that's going to be well above probably 100 or so million trit whenever it all is said and done. So that is going to be very interesting to have that kind of crazy stockpile and everything going on. So we're going to go and get out to grid here. It'll actually probably be even more than that. It'll probably be actually closer to, like, I don't know. We'll know the final numbers when we get it all. But 300 million trit. That'll last quite a while doing like the small stuff we're going to be doing in the beginning. But in the when we get into the bigger stuff, it's going to be a little bit longer, or it'll get used up a lot quicker in that regard. And then obviously we'll be getting a lot of Mexilon and pyrite as well, which I'm planning on doing this, getting up to like 125,000 cubic meters and export, and then we'll do build another export that is more focused on isogen and noxium, but we can get the rest of that stuff in nullsec. All right, we are going to be focusing on Plag and Veldspar today. I think we're just gonna start at the top of the list. We're gonna even take Scordite. Why not? We're trying to be picky, trying to have a good spread of things, because even if we do over farm for Scordite and all the ores, really, we can kind of build our export the way we want. So if we end up kind of going over that 125,000 by just kind of mining everything, then when it comes down to it, we could technically just export Plag and Veldspar, but really, Veldspar is probably the most important of all of them, because we can get Mexilon, we can get pyrite from doing moon mining, and then we'll be doing some Arknor Bistot. So I really am trying to put as much mining time here in HiSec in the next few days as I possibly can. Definitely going to be going a lot harder and mining a lot more this week, just to try to get this export out there so that we have that stockpile, because in like 15 days or so, we're really going to start needing to be creating a lot of ship hulls and things like that, and modules to start building the stuff that we're looking at. And we want to position ourselves that we have all the stuff in system and it's ready to go when we need it, instead of having to wait on it. So we don't want to procrastinate too much. And the sooner we get that that export on its way, then the jump freighter servers can kind of do their thing, and we won't necessarily be stopgapped waiting for that stuff to occur. We'll still have a lot of reactions to do, still a lot of research. If you're watching the solo nullsec series, you'll know that we're still doing a lot of research. There's still a lot to be done in there, but this is very much a crucial part in the whole manufacturing process, because this is by far the best way for us to get trit for all that stuff. A lot of what I've been doing in nullsec is actually ratting and melting loot, and that kind of covers us for a few smaller volume things, like building ventures or tractor beams or things like that. But when it comes to actually building like blackbirds and badgers and stuff like that go into cranes and falcons, we're not going to want to be at the point where we're ready to run or build a blackbird and we have to go out and do a bunch of rat sites and just melt down and not have a whole lot of control over any of that stuff. As far as the isogen and the noxium, settling that up, we can get some of that stuff in nullsec by mining things like crocite, kernite. Very, very low volume out there for that stuff. But I think that when we get to the point after this export's kind of on its way, I'm probably going to take the endurance, and we'll probably spend a good week going off and doing rare ores. We'll be looking for rare ore sites here in HiSec and focusing a lot on the the noxium and the isogen rich ores in those sites, because the isogen and the noxium we get out of those will go a long way. And we can, if we have the time, we can get lucky enough to find a few of those sites. We could actually kind of tack that onto this shipment before it goes out. I might look tomorrow into doing, you know, a couple of sites. I need to kind of like, you know, successfully find at least one site every other day or so, and kind of get that stuff kind of stockpiled as well. Because that's the other thing too, is like we can, you know, export all this stuff that we're mining here in this system, but at the end of the day, after it's reprocessed and all that stuff is done, then we really only have bulk trit, pyrite, and mexilon, and we would still be in need of the other pieces to just build just basic things. So we have to be very mindful about kind of what we're producing right now. And with the amount of ore that we've got stockpiled right now, we're looking at about 12 million trit. So my plan today is to do as many of these trips as possible. It does take a little bit of time with the Mackinaw, usually about 20 minutes unboosted to fill this up. A little bit less if I'm doing plag, but definitely just gonna be trying to get as much stuff done as possible. So trit and mexilon here. We don't necessarily go out too much in nullsec for moon mining, and moon goo is very important too in all the things we'll be doing, because of reactions and building things like pressurized oxidizers and reinforced carbon fibers, and a lot of that stuff is put in as a reaction for 30 days and then not touched again until, you know, so like making reinforced carbon fibers can, you know, turn into, with only one reaction formula for everything, it can be like a 2-month process to kind of build a bulk amount of like reinforced carbon fiber or pressurized oxidizers and stuff. And a lot of that is going to be going into things like core temperature regulators, and then eventually that will get turned into capital core temp regulators to go into like capital ship construction. And that's kind of where I'm leaning on right now, is just like the sino pieces, the core temp regulators, and all that will be just kind of slowly getting done while we're just kind of, you know, researching all of our BPOs. And then eventually we need to build a Charon there in nullsec, because when we start actually importing these vast amounts of ore, which I'll have those contracts, those carrier contracts, and land at our Tatara, so that we can essentially reprocess them immediately. And then we need a Charon so we can actually move 1.1 million cubic meters at a time. Otherwise it takes a very, very long time. We are probably looking at, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 or even 4 million cubic meters of minerals that we'll be taking basically from the Tatara, where it's refined, over to the Satoyo, where everything is made. So in a jump freighter, when you're capped at like, you know, 375,000 cubic meters, it can take a long time to move 4 million cubic meters of materials. So having a Charon, when it's only going from like one structure to another, turns what would be multiple trips into, like, you know, if you have 4 million, then it's going to be 4 trips, right? And we have to build a Charon anyway as an input material for the ray, the jump freighter. So having those on hand, we'll probably build 2. I'll probably, you know, have one that we'll use locally in null to kind of move this stuff back and forth, and then the other one will just be put on mothballs, so when we get ready to pull the trigger on the jump freighter, we already have that hull in place. But otherwise, it's pretty chill. We haven't seen a whole lot of craziness go on in HiSec. All the mining we've done this year here in HiSec, we haven't really seen anything crazy happen. We haven't been bothered or none of that. I thought that maybe with, I think a lot of people were suspecting that, like with Crimson Harvest, I think, you know, people were worried that there was going to be a little more hostile here in HiSec just because of the 90% drop rate. But it has been. Don't think that it hasn't. But where I'm operating and where the people I know have been operating in HiSec, it hasn't really caused too much of an issue. We have a few more weeks of Crimson Harvest, and then we'll be back off the 90% drop. So anytime anything adds motivation to killing ships, whether it be like the Easter event where implants can drop when you kill a pod, or Crimson Harvest, when you have 90% loot drop rate, anything like that can always affect mining, just like it affects everything else in EVE, because it just further motivates people to go out and do suicide ganking. And suicide ganking is probably one of the easier ways with a 90% drop rate to make a good amount of bisque, because it's essentially a 2-character kind of setup where you have the aggressor, the person who is going to suicide gank and going to get capped, and they're going to get killed by Concord, and then their alt, who is usually unaffiliated with the entire process, will come in at the end and scoop the wreck into a bustard or something like that. So always be mindful of that. Even if you see, that's the other thing too, is even if you see industrials on D-scan, most of the time, yeah, they're only going to be moving stuff around as normal, but bustards plus like catalyst, those are a usual formula for suicide gank that are specifically going after loot for the most part. Good old Scordite. Every time I get Scordite, it always lowers my my trip value, but it's been about, after reprocess, or not after, but after compression, if I go after straight Veldspar, it's usually close to 6 million a trip. It's a little bit less for Plague, it's heavier, so there's less ISPRIM 3 kind of in that 44,000 cubic meter of the Mackinaw. But like, I want a variety of things. We've the last few days we've been out here, we've been going really heavy with Veldspar, and while that's nice, we also want to make sure we have a healthy amount of Mexilon to go along with everything. So a lot of it is just about looking at of how things are kind of adding up and filling in gaps the best you can. Now, there is a pretty easy way to figure out if your or how much your reprocessed is. If you were just like stockpiling like I am in a compressed form, you can obviously like go into the window and go to reprocess, and you can look at what the output would be. You don't have to reprocess it. That's one way to do it, but there's also another way to kind of track it as well, which I'll kind of show you guys how I'm tracking what I'll end up with in nullsec. Alright, so since the EVE appraisal is actually not a thing anymore, I use Janus. Janus is a good way to look at your potential reprocessing. So what you want to do is you can go to your inventory, you want to select all your compressed ore and hit Control-C to copy it. And then you can go in here and you can just paste all that stuff right here in the window and hit Submit. And then after this loads, you're going to be able to see the volume, the split, buy, and sell value. You can obviously go down here and add comments, or you can adjust the buy percentage if you're submitting this for like a buyback. But you can go to the Reproc tab, and then you can actually look at what this, you can change all the variables for what you'd be potentially reprocessing for. So Satara will say T1 rig and everything, and you can go down here and you see exactly what you'd end up with. So we're about 20 million trit refined right now, about 500,000 Mexilon and Pyrite, and then I will just kind of continually look at this as we kind of build our stockpile. That way I have a good idea, because when I go back into like nullsec and I'm looking at what I need in terms of these minerals, I have a good idea. I don't want to like do an export and then not have enough to do a certain thing. So being able to see how much refined product you'll be getting without actually refining it is a pretty cool way to keep an eye on things. And also, if you're really big into spreadsheeting and stuff for your manufacturing, you're probably already got all the input materials already logged out, and if that's the case, you can actually take the value that you see in Janus, the reprocess value you see in Janus, and like put it alongside what you need, and then you cross-reference that to what you technically have, and then once you kind of get to where you need, then you can export it or do whatever. Now there's still like I talk a lot about like manufacturing and like nullsec. I like manufacturing in nullsec just because I can use a Toyo and like a Chitara for refining. But the thing is plenty of people still do manufacturing here in HiSec, and since they've kind of like normalized the benefit, there used to be the difference between the bonuses you got if like a Satoyo was in HiSec, LowSec, or NullSec. There used to be different index values, so it was better to actually manufacture stuff in NullSec because of the sec status. But They've normalized all that with the last expansion, so you can technically do manufacturing here. It's just I would say structure losses are probably more common here in high sec than in null sec, because you have a lot of people just war decking smaller corporations. And if you are part of a smaller corporation, then yeah, you are 100% going to probably get war decked, and you're probably going to lose your structure. It might not happen right away, but it will happen eventually. So unless you're a really big corporation that is above the threshold that most of these war deckers tend to target, then it's almost better to just kind of go out and do stuff in nullsec. You can also manufacture, research, all that stuff inside NPC structures. Obviously, you're gonna pay a lot more job fees. You're gonna pay a lot more taxes. All the fees are a lot higher than if you were in an actual player citadel engineering complex or whatever the case may be. But don't think that if you want to get into manufacturing, don't think that you have to absolutely commit to living in nullsec. You can get your feet wet. You can do a lot of the more less complex manufacturing pipelines in high sec, and then when you actually want to do things like invention and start doing capital construction, then you can go out there and in nullsec and do it, because capital construction actually requires SOV, and it also requires a system upgrade to do. So if you're going to be building like anything that's like, you know, requires a capital shipyard, then you're 100% want to be in nullsec. That's why I always just, you know, I always plan on just kind of setting up my manufacturing for a long term in nullsec, because even though we're building stuff that, you know, we could technically do in high sec, we're already set up. We already have a vast majority of cubic meters of, you know, materials and stuff where we are going to end up doing the jump freighter stuff, and eventually we'll be doing dreads and things. And one of my really big stretch goals is to like just build my build another Leviathan, and kind of attract that through a series of videos, which that'll take a very long time. Obviously, everything that we're doing now for manufacturing is working towards that goal, because we're researching stuff. We'll slowly acquire more BPOs. We'll slowly get that stuff into research as well. And that's what about the manufacturing is. It's just like kind of getting all of your operations as well defined as possible. So like getting PI well defined, getting you know, moon mining, ice mining, and ore mining both in high sec and null sec. Doing all that on a regular basis is really important, and also just ratting. Like pretty much everything that I do all circles back to manufacturing. Even when I go out and rat, the loot I melt down and it goes as minerals. And then when I salvage the wrecks, that stuff will go, that's the salvage goes into rig manufacturing. It all kind of just feeds the manufacturing beast. Now pretty much up to this point, we've been very consistent with our high sec mining. I think though, I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I want to actually progress with high sec mining. We've been kind of just coming out every day and doing, you know, going out with the Mackinaw once or twice and just kind of building stuff up. But I think that what I'm going to end up doing probably is kind of going 1 week out of the month and just blitzing a lot of mining, try to get one export done. So essentially the goal would be getting 125,000 cubic meters of compressed ore mined in a 7-day period, ship it all off, and then not really touch high sec for another like 3 weeks, and see how far that ore kind of lasts in null sec. Because if it turns out that we're not using as much as we thought, or we're not using as much as we're importing, then we can kind of, you know, cut down on the amount of time we're doing mining in high sec, and potentially going out and doing null sec mining. Another thing I've been wanting to do too is go back to Poshman and do spud main. If we don't end up doing rare ore mining in high sec, I think my next preferred thing to do would be spud main mining in Poshman, because that stuff is just great. It can be a lot more tedious. Obviously, the rare ore sites will be a lot easier to get the target minerals that we need. It's just a little bit more difficult to locate them without traveling a very long distance. Whereas Poshman, you know, you hit a Poshman system and the spud main will be there. You just have to, you know, be very mindful of the environment. And if you have never actually operated in Poshman, it definitely can take it's a learning curve for the most part. But earlier in this series, I did a lot of Poshman mining and stacking Spudmain, and Spudmain is just one of my favorite ores, especially for manufacturing. So I do miss when it was in nullsec, and you could put XCav drones from Oracle on that stuff and just kind of chew on a whole rock all day. And definitely mining is definitely a different kind of animal nowadays, which is unfortunate because I really do miss drone mining. And we've done drone mining in this series with the Orca and the Porpoise. I do kind of like the whole mechanic. I just they need to the drones need to be doing a lot more cubic meters per cycle for it to really outshine what we're doing with a unboosted Mackinaw. And even back in the day, I would never touch Mackinaw. The mining patch that kind of balanced all the mining ships made the skiff essentially worthless, and made the Mackinaw really kind of shine a lot, because before that patch, the Mackinaw and the Retriever were just the only benefit they really had was their ore hold. But now when you compare them to other things, to the other barges and the other exhumers, they just have better EHP. They're faster to warp than like even a skiff, and which is just ridiculous to me because the amount of mass is much greater than like a skiff or a procurer. But it is what it is. We have another fellow Mackinaw here on grid. Who is you? 57 days old. Probably just a mining alt. This alt, actually, I need to replace this alt and just put like a freshie out here, but I really don't have any motivation to train another mining alt. I've trained so many mining alts up to this point that I just really don't want to do that again. Is this guy even on local? Yes. Where's he going? Burning, burning. Probably going after that dense Veldspar. We're about to fill up though, and then we can go compress. And probably, since we didn't get a whole lot, yeah, we're good. Since we didn't get any Veldspar, we're gonna have to go get Veldspar on this next trip. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff compressed, and then we'll probably go to a different belt and grab us some Veldspar just to kind of round things out a bit. As you can see here, we're like 3.5 million, so probably about 4 million compressed, so about 2 million less, focusing on Plag and Scordite and all that. But let's go get this stuff kind of sorted and get onto a whole thing of Veldspar. Alright, we are back out here. I'm using my Veldspar tab now to just grab as much of that stuff as possible. Fill up. I was right after the compression. It was like 4.5 value, so we brought our stockpile up to 105 million. So after this we'll be like 110, 112 ish, but I'll probably end up doing a lot more of this tonight. I thought about actually just like to simplify it in my brain, just going out like for all Veldspar one trip, and then all Plag another, and then all Pyro the next, and just not do Scordite at all, and just kind of keep rotating it through that. That way kind of keeps it interesting, because when you do have like a goal of doing a certain amount of volume to export, it can be when you actually have like a goal in order to like get something else accomplished, it can be very tedious, and you can end up getting burnt out pretty fast by putting certain restrictions or goals on yourself. Normally when I'm out here mining high sec, I really don't have any goals. I think a lot of earlier in the series there was no goal, so that's really kind of what made mining just very relaxing for me. Now it's a little different now because we do have a lot of mineral requirements there in nullsec, so it's not an immediate concern right now. But doing a consistent amount of mining to facilitate what we need to do out there is by far the best thing we can do to kind of prepare for our needs in that regard. We don't want to just like chill and not do any mining until we need it, and then we're essentially just bottlenecking ourselves. So I'm a really big fan of actually just like, you know, being consistent with everything that I do. And even if I'm not mining a whole lot every day, I'm mining a little bit every day. So that goal is always kind of moving and everything. Same thing with like manufacturing and research. It's like, you know, keeping all 10 science slots full of something being researched, all the, you know, reaction slots full of something being done there. Because probably more so than anything in Eve, manufacturing time is literally money. And I'm even like contemplating focusing down on the 11th slot on my main out there in nullsec. So I have I'm basically 11 11 11, so 11 manufacturing jobs, 11 science jobs, and 11 reaction jobs, just to have one extra slot to get even more done. Because the thing is, when you start doing really complex manufacturing in terms of like capital ships or Tech 2 things, you're building a lot of components, and you want to be able to have as many of those job slots available so you could do as many different things at the same time. Otherwise it could take you much longer. Like imagine trying to build like a jump freighter if you only had one science slot opened up. It would be very, very difficult, right? You'd be able to do one thing at a time, and with 10 or 11 it's still it's still not great. The solution to that too is if you have alts, you can train those alts to have slots as well. So instead of having 10 slots on one character, you could have your alt who's trained up for 10 as well. So you could theoretically train or research 20 BPOs instead of 10. Or if you had 4 characters, you could do 40 instead of 10. But I haven't gone down that route. I don't see the need to do that right now. A lot of my alts in nullsec are strictly just PI, so I try not to put any more burden on them as possible. And also by having all of my research jobs on the same tune, I can track it more easily. I'm the type of person that would like put a bunch of research jobs on all these alts and forget that they even have BPOs, and potentially just, you know, waste a lot of time by not getting those completed and refilled. So for me, it's just I'm simplifying, you know, simplifying things for me, because I just kind of know how I am. I've done that before, where I've put jobs on alts, and a month or 2 months later, we're talking about like a job that may have only lasted like 9 days. A month later, I'm like, where's this BPO at? And then I finally, after digging around, I find it. It's been sitting on alt, deliver now. It's been sitting there, deliver now, for like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm like, well, that's not good. So obviously that's nothing that a spreadsheet can't fix, obviously. So that is definitely something that we do. Like I have a spreadsheet, a filtered sortable spreadsheet that shows every BPO that I own, every reaction that I own, that allows me to kind of sort it, search it. So if I am looking at a new thing to build, instead of immediately trying to dig through the asset window, I can kind of go to that spreadsheet and I can see what I already own. Eventually I'll add research levels to that, you know, kind of add a field that denotes that thing as being completely researched or whatever. And then also I have spreadsheets that show shopping lists, things that I can easily copy from Excel over into the multi-buy window, and quickly kind of just, you know, I use Excel to expedient or help organize the whole process, and just make my life easier, because it allows you to actually, like, instead of having to get in game and kind of dig through menus, it allows you to, at a moment's glance. I use Google Sheets because I can access it on my phone. So if I think of something I'm out and about or whatever, I can kind of look at the sheet and I can add stuff to it, and then I can reference it back when I'm at the computer doing stuff. So that's why I mean, you can use Excel online as well, but I think the Google Sheet works a little bit better on the mobile platform. So that's kind of what I do there. I have like one Eve spreadsheet that just has like a bunch of tabs. So I have all my my PI stuff that's all like laid out, and kind of PI goals and numbers and figures, and then my my BPO and formula list, and then I even track my characters' omegas on there. I track my characters' project discovery progression, so I know exactly how long and what day I'll be done with getting certain martial BPCs on certain characters. And that's something I do too, like aside from doing like the manufacturing for the solo nullsec video series and mining in HiSec here for this series. One of the big things that I do is I farm martial BPCs, which is it takes a long time and a lot of commitment to do that, because it's not like, you know, you set it all up and you work really hard. I do like 1,000 submissions a day for product discovery across 5 tunes, and it takes about 82 days going from like level 0 to getting the martial BPC on that, but that ends up being like 45 to 47 billion after you build the marshals. The build cost is taken out, so that's 45 to 47 billion profit over the course of like 83 days is not bad. So, and you get a lot of other things too along the way as well. So not just I build marshals primarily, but I also build and sell enforcers and purifiers, not purifier, but yeah, purifiers, pacifiers, enforcers, and marshals. And then I get skins along the way with all that stuff too. A lot of people that I talk to, they think I'm crazy for doing all that product discovery, but it's just something that I've kind of always liked doing since I started playing, and the rewards and just figuring out how to, you know, sustainably continue to build marshals has been a really big way for me to kind of fund everything that I do in game. Now, obviously, all the other stuff that I'm doing, as well as like manufacturing and PI and all this stuff, does contribute as well to my income, and it does really, really well. And it's a lot more instant gratification in terms of doing a task and then getting the ISK reward for it. Research maybe not so much, like, you know, building a jump freighter can take months and months and months and months, and depending on how you actually progress that pipeline, you know, you could break even or you can make a little bit of a profit. So it just kind of all depends. More recently, I'm not really too concerned about ISK for the most part. A lot of what I'm doing now, after so many years of playing, is just kind of enjoying the different facets of the game, and hopefully showing a lot of people how everything is done. Just because I might not, you know, always build jump freighters for a long amount of time, but I think documenting how it's done, or just documenting, you know, manufacturing or like sustainable solo high-sec mining is very valuable in anybody who's trying to get into industry. And I'll plan on doing the same thing with like ratting as well too. I have done a ratting series back in the day, which is kind of like the precursor to like what solo nullsec is. My solo omega series was a lot of ratting, a lot of doing stuff in nullsec on the more of the PvE side, the non-industry side. But I'm planning on kind of rolling all that into the solo nullsec series as well. Just like with this series, the mining in this series won't always be in HiSec. When we progress into doing like wormhole mining or Poshfin mining or low-sec or null-sec mining, we will just, this is the home of all the mining that's going on for the operation that I'm kind of got established and everything. All right, we're already doing so much better by going after this feldspar. Absolutely great. I plan on filling up this load and then probably calling the video there. Now that we've gotten a lot of stuff set up in nullsec and we're just kind of very consistently mining here in HiSec, a lot of stuff is very, very routine. I'm going to try to shake things up a little bit in the next few days and show you guys how I kind of blitz acquire the Isogen, the Noxium from HiSec. But also I'm going to show you how I kind of do that the lazy man way in nullsec. And there's no surprise about how it's done in nullsec. I mean, I've already said it in this video. I go out, I do rat sites because I enjoy ratting, and as a byproduct of ratting, you get loot, and that loot drops and you melt it. You get a little bit of all the minerals, not a lot, but if you do a lot of ratting, then it does add up in terms of making things, very small things. So I'm gonna go more in depth on like how I've kind of min-maxed that process, what ship I use, what skills to go after to kind of make that, if you want to melt down loot to do manufacturing, to make that more efficient, I guess you could say. And it does take some training as far as skills go, but I think that all the skills that kind of go into that stuff is very important. That'll probably be the next solo nullsec video that I'll do, since we're kind of waiting on a lot of reaction jobs to get done. Is I really do want to kind of show you guys how to be successful in manufacturing, regardless of if you're in high sec or if you're in nullsec. Just using everything at your disposal to kind of, you know, accomplish things in industry the best that I can. But also, like, if you have any suggestions on, like, you know, what you want to see built or talked about, or whether it's, you know, about PI, or it's about acquiring minerals, or building rigs, or just maybe just skills in general. I haven't really done a manufacturing industry skills video. I've done a mining skills video, but going over actual skills for going into manufacturing, invention, research, reactions, all that stuff, I haven't really covered any of that. So that might be a good topic one day to discuss. Got a lot of NPC ventures out here right now. They don't mine a very they don't have a very high mining rate, but if they are targeting like dense feldspar, then it does kind of take it away from what I can get, which is unfortunate. But I've never liked the presence of NPC miners, because it's just a tax on players, or it's just another tax on ore availability in high sec. I guess it does add some like depth to the game as well. So seeing those NPC miners out there, it's like, oh, well, I'm not the only one in the whole universe. There's not just players out there, you know. There's actually like other layers of corporations and NPC stuff that's, you know, kind of going out and doing stuff. So I understand, like, as a storyteller, or like, as a I understand that whole like situation, but just get off my rock. And I think eventually we'll probably use, like, obviously if we go to like Potion, we'll use a different ship, and nullsec we'll use different ships as well. It's just I have a really hard time kind of moving off of the Mackinaw here in high sec, because it's just so good. Let's target up a few more rocks. I don't think we'll kill everything that we've got targeted right now before we fill up. What are we at right now? 30. We have about 14,000 cubic meters to go, and that'll be good. I'll probably try to do like another 6 runs. That's like I'll probably try to do like another 2 hours of mining tonight, and just really kind of start. What I need to be doing is, what days where there's no power stronghold in this system, I really just need to mine as much as possible, because there are days when there's a power stronghold and it pretty much cuts off mining in this system. So the way you get around that is, you know, mining in a different system for the day or whatever. But I think that I really don't like moving around too much like that. I really need to be better about, if there's not a power stronghold in system, just to mine a crazy amount. So if there is a day of the week that there is one, I'm not necessarily falling too far behind, as it were. But yeah, routine. And also the next episode, I'll try to answer your questions, any questions that I see pop up in the comment sections. I usually try to give it like a few episodes or so to kind of build up before I address those, because I like to do them in kind of like bulk. Got some there's a Mackinaw out here. He's like doing exactly what I'm doing. Smart guy. But in terms of like everything else, like the expansion coming out in November, I'm not really, it's not, like I said in other videos, it is not going to affect me in the least bit. I do think that, like, I want to create a tune that is aligned with Guristas and go through that whole thing and actually, like, you know, grind that rep and do those missions. Probably have another alt that's also just like Angel. It's just whenever you go really dramatic into like a certain standing, like in Poshvin, or with, like, if you want to go really high into Caldari, you always sacrifice something. So if you really, you know, push security missions for like Caldari, you really do kind of take a big hit with Galante. So flying through Galante space can be very dangerous. So I usually recommend that people try to have characters dedicated to doing any sort of really crazy standings content. because it can just make moving around high-sec space a little obnoxious. Alright. That's the other thing about Crimson Harvest as well. I mean, not necessarily are people more inclined to go out there and like do suicide gank stuff, but also there's just more combat signatures kind of out and about, and people are like farming those for the event. And it's another reason why you might see like a system that is normally very, very quiet or doesn't have a lot of people in local. You'll see a lot of people kind of in there during Crimson Harvest, because they're all running those sites. Once Crimson Harvest is done, everybody will go back to their little corners of New Eden, and things will kind of like settle down for the most part. But another thing I can, if you're getting into like high-sec mining, another thing I can recommend too is add standings. If there's any corporation or any alliance that is known for ganking miners, or if you have any sort of bad problems with certain people, add them as standings, and give them a negative standing or whatever the case may be, so that when a member of that corporation or that alliance come into local, you can see that straight away, so you don't have to necessarily show info on everybody that comes into local, which can get exhausting. So there's not really, I mean, I would do a video over like standings and stuff like that, but at this level of just like mining and high sec, really it's all about just like looking at a corporation, looking at an alliance, looking at Z Killboard if they're like really gung-ho about going after miners, and then just right-clicking on their info and just adding them a contact, and then adjust their rating. That's just gonna help you. I guess it's another tip, but that's just gonna help you visually identify threats that aren't necessarily apparent at first glance without. We're at 3.5 million. Not bad. Got a little bit of it in Feldspar, but then Feldspar rocks are nice. But if we were going to go strictly after tier 3 rocks, we'd be flying around a lot, because there's only like 2 or 3 per belt, which I don't like traveling around that much. I like kind of hanging out on one belt. I usually work one belt at a time, and then when all the Feldspar flag and all that stuff is kind of gone, then I'll move on. I haven't done enough mining to really worry about multi-belt mining every day. Every time I log back in, I essentially just kind of like go back to the same belt and kind of just do things. It's like Groundhog's Day, but for mining. We should be about done here. Very close. Probably we need one more cycle. So 116 seconds. That's another thing too, is like I'm actually in a Indicom border system, which we have a state stellar observatory, and that's important because we get 10% shield capacity being in this system, and also 10% mining speed. So my mining speed in this system with this configuration is probably faster than this same configuration in another system that doesn't have the bonus, because my Modulated strip miner 2s will cycle 10% faster being in this Indicom system. And you can see that by looking down here on the bottom. If you see a state stellar observatory with the 10% mining bonus, that's how you know you're getting it. It won't show up on fit window or if you're docked or anything like that, but it will show up if you hover the tooltip for your miners when you're in space. So that's kind of the configuration that over the course of like several months I've kind of like settled on. Type B2 crystals for just normal belt ore, and then with that 10% mining bonus really turns out to perform really well. What we got? How much longer? Over the halfway point. How far are we from these rocks? 4 and 5,000. So we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna go ahead in the line. See which direction we go. Okay, we're gonna go right through. So we should be able to just align here, and then once we actually complete this cycle, we'll be able to just warp off. But that'll be pretty much it for this video. Appreciate you guys for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. And come on, almost there. I'll see you guys in the next one. Obviously, more mining every day. Aw, just a little bit more. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.